Good evening and welcome to the seminar. It's the Spooky 2 for Beginners Generator Errors. I actually convinced the Spooky guys to let me do some uh, Spooky for Beginners sessions, and this is the first one. I've never seen a seminar before on generator errors, so hopefully this is new stuff. Hopefully everybody will enjoy it, and let's get started. Okay. Oh, if you have any questions, you need to put them in the Q&A box. I cannot keep up with the chat. There's just no way. And so if you open a QA box, put the questions in there, and when I get done with the presentation, I will go through every question in there. And as we're going through, you could put more in, but we will not end this session until I've answered all the questions. Okay, so let's do this. All right. All right, so this presentation is broken up into 7 parts. As I was doing it, we have an introduction. We're going to talk about some background stuff, what causes errors, how do you know if you have an error, let's talk about recovery, we'll talk about fixing the cause, and then we're going to wrap up. So one of the things I do that's different in my presentations, I work on skills. I don't talk about a lot of theory or background. The concept I have is that I wanted to get you to where you can do things. That's my goal for this, and that one is as well. So I really want you to know, do I have a generator? I want you to know how to recover if you have a generator and what you can do to prevent them in the future. And obviously we'll do Q&A. I'll do Q&A on virtually anything spooky. That's not a problem. So obviously I'd like to answer these questions first, but they go in order anyway. So you can ask anything you want in the question and answer, and I'll do my best to answer those. So who the heck am I? I wondered that about myself. So my name is Michael Goss. I've been an information technology specialist since 1979. I'm a techie, okay? That's what I do. And always part of my job, actually since 1973, has been doing user tech support. So I'm pretty good at doing that and explaining things and helping with the tech stuff for non-techies. But you have to understand, I'm not a frequency practitioner, unlike Brad Johnson, who I admire a lot. Brad is a practitioner. He can tell you, oh, you need to do this and this and this because of this. And I've worked with 50 people on this. That is not me. I've helped a lot of people, but I help my friends and family. So I haven't helped 50 people and track them and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not a frequency practitioner. I apologize for that. If you're expecting me to say, hey, you need to do this because you have this condition, I can help to try to figure out what to do by doing searches, but I can't really tell you what to do because it's just not who I am. I've had my Spooky since 2018. I currently have 2 GX generators, 16 XM generators. I have a Colloidal Sulfur kit. I have Central Plasma that I got in October of 23, and I got a Scalar in March of 24. I actually have an AHA Halo as well, but I don't have the Microjet. Okay, you're welcome to contact me anytime. You'll see my email floating around and all these things. That's not a problem. And I'm also very active in the Spooky Right for Life Facebook group. If you're not a member of that, you really should be. There's a lot of good stuff. I mean, there's 89,000 members, hundreds of posts per week. That's a great resource if you have any questions at all. And there's a lot of really talented people there. I always think it's important for me to explain why I do these presentations. I've found through Facebook, there's a lot of people who buy Spooky who just don't know anything about computers, and it's very difficult for them. The Spooky program and the techniques really aren't that difficult if you follow. Here are the steps you do, and there's not that many steps, but it is just overwhelming to non-technical people. And so I really try to help those people. I really do have a personal goal to make sure that someone who purchased Spooky equipment can use it. To be honest, I got started in that aspect, and I've been using Spooky for a number of years, but I wasn't really in Facebook and that sort of stuff. But when I started getting into this Facebook, there was this lady who this was in June, the previous September had bought a Spooky Central because she had cancer. And she got it, and she tried to set up and couldn't get it to work. I mean, just couldn't get it to work. And she just shoved it in her closet shelf somewhere. And so she was using something else, and she wasn't really happy with it. So about June, she got into Facebook and said, "I'm having this problem. And can anybody help me?" And so yes, I helped her with that. And so we set up a time I could help her. And when she joined the call, she had just come back from the doctor, and the doctor and all of her cancer indicators were way up, and she was really upset, as you can all imagine. And she had been using other things, but apparently they weren't helping. And I said, well, let's get this working, and hopefully that'll help you. So I spent a couple hours with her. We got everything hooked up and got it all started for her, and she went forward with that. And so she was pretty happy when we got done. And when I checked back with her about 8 weeks later, and she'd been to the doctor again, and all her numbers were way down. And so one of the things I took out of that, it really, really is a personal issue for me. People spend a lot of money on this equipment and they can't figure out how to use it. And that's where I am. That's my personal mission, to make sure that everybody who bought the Spooky can use it. It's not hugely difficult if you stick to do these things. So that's the reason I'm doing these things. So our second part we're going to do is the generator error background. So what the heck are these things? All it is, I mean, it sounds like that. It just means that the Windows itself can't talk to the generator. That's what it means. And so that's not Spooky can't talk to the generator, because Spooky talks to Windows. Windows talks to the generator. And so there's some sort of communication problem between the generator and Windows. Who knows what it is, but that's what it is. And that gets reported by the Spooky software as, hey, there's a generator error. And literally that's all the information you really get. So what causes them? Well, there's a number of different things that can cause the generator. There's power fluctuations. So if the generator turns off for a second, it comes back on. You can have USB connection failures, which are common, and you can have interference in the communication. That's the plasma. And we're going to talk about connection failures and interference in depth in this presentation. I can't address the power fluctuations, although my general recommendation for your Spooky equipment is to get a UPS, which is a universal uninterruptible power supply. And what those do is, when you lose power for half a second or 5 minutes or whatever it is, it goes on battery backup, so your equipment never knows it happened. So it's really nice if you have flaky stuff. It's really nice. Last night I had a quick power failure. I could tell because some of my stuff wasn't on in the morning, wasn't turned on anymore. All my Spooky stuff, well, most of my Spooky stuff was, because I have it all on a UPS. And so it stayed up, I didn't even know. But the UPSs are good for maybe 30 minutes. You can get ones that are longer, but now you're talking about serious dollars. So my last big one, last month, I had a 13-hour outage, and no, the UPS didn't survive that. But for short ones, the UPSs are really good, and that way your system stays up. Because when you do get, otherwise you get a generator error if you're lucky, or your system, your computer turns off and doesn't come back on, and so on and so forth. So it all depends on what you want to do. Certainly, if you're trying to do 24/7 treatment, you want it to stay up all the time. You can get a UPS for less than $100 that'll run all your Spooky equipment. Part 3, causes of errors, the real causes. Okay, plasma. Now we get into it. Most of the time, what people are getting generator errors is because they have Spooky plasma. I mean, that's just the way that is, that the Spooky plasma generates a lot of radio frequency stuff through the plasma, and that gets into the generator and causes the generator to it gets confused, or it gets frozen up, or that sort of stuff. And that's what causes it in a plasma system. The plasma is going out there, and it gets into the generator. So it gets in through there. How's it get in there? Well, through the USB cable is one of them, or the power wire. The power wire actually acts as an antenna and brings its stuff in. One of the things that there's 2 things that Spooky's told you to do is keep the power wires away from the plasma. And you have this nifty USB cable, which we'll talk about in a minute, that has this little green donut in it, and that's a USB cable that goes from the generator that's hooked up to your Spooky Central to your computer. And on the output side of the generator, you have coax cables that have those green donut filters in it that are right next to the generator. And those go to the Spooky Central, and those are fine. So there's a bunch of things they recommend, and plasma can cause computer errors and affect other electronic devices, although not very often. So if you have a plasma, that's the most common cause of generator errors is plasma. Okay, now the other thing that could cause it are connections. That's actually more difficult, believe it or not. The reason it's more difficult is it's hard to figure out what's doing it. By the way, let me go back to the plasma. Plasma is really interesting because plasma, it depends on the frequency and the waveform and a whole bunch of other stuff, whether it causes problems. What I've found is it's really common. I've had these, I've got a lot of experience in it. And by the way, I probably help anywhere from 3 to 5 people per week on Facebook with generator errors. So I've seen a lot of these things. And what I find is that if you're doing the healing sort of plasma, those tend to have less problems than if you're doing killing, especially if you're doing sweeps or cancer or that sort of stuff. There's a greater chance of having an error. So it gets really interesting. Maybe you've been using your plasma for 6 months, never had a problem, and then for whatever reason you start having problems. Maybe because you're using something different now, maybe because you rearrange things, whatever it is. But all of a sudden you have them and you can't get rid of them. Now, like I said, the other problem are connections. So what causes it with connections? Again, it's a communication error. So that means that Windows is having problems talking to the generator, having conversation. Well, there's a lot of things that can have that. If the computer goes to sleep, believe it or not, that's going to cause a problem because there's a pretty tight connection with the generator. So you want to make sure your computer is set up so it can't sleep, number one, and it also that if you close the lid on it so you can get some sleep, you don't want the light, that you don't want it to go to sleep then either. Those are the two main things with computers going to sleep. Obviously, like I said, you can have power problems with your generator. If you have a USB hub, consider that as well. A lot of the powered ones, they have power on them, and if you have a power issue with those, they can cause a problem. I've talked to people who said, "Oh no, you don't actually have to have power on a USB hub." It depends on the USB hub. The ones I have, yes, if you lose the power on them, nothing goes through. So anyway, there's bad or intermittent cables. Believe it or not, it's just a cable. What can go bad? But it's running at an RF frequency through the cable, and it's a much more sensitive than just something plugged into the wall. So you can have bad or intermittent cables, and we'll talk about how to figure that out later. You can have a bad or intermittent USB hub. It's one of the things that we'll talk about as well. So if you have, and what that is for you don't know what a USB hub is, on your computer, you have anywhere from 1 to 3 USB connections on it. And so maybe you have 3. So if you have a Gen X, okay, that's 2 generators, you plug that into one. And then you have an XM, you plug that into another one. And then you get a third XM, or a second XM. It's like, oh, where's this go? I only had 2. Okay, so there's a thing called a USB hub. What it does is you plug it into a single port, and then you plug everything into it. And so, for instance, here in my den where I am, I have a 16-port USB hub. So I can plug 16 things into it, and I have 15 plugged into it. And so, that's what a USB hub, and so they can be bad. So that's another thing that could be bad. Obviously, like I said, power problems for the generator, the USB hub will cause communication problems, and you could have a USB connection problem on your computer. Believe it or not, that's more common than you think, and I'll come back. I'll talk about that more in just a minute when we talk about solving your problems. So those are the possibilities. Those are the causes how you can have problems. It's a long list, but it's not too bad. How do I know if I have an error? Okay. I hear a lot of people, well, it's not doing anything. It's not doing whatever. That's what this is about. Okay. The first thing we're going to talk about here, and I'll use my mouse pointer. This is actually my office computer. And what it amounts to, it's running around and you're looking for red writing in your generator icon. That's this one here. Then there's an expansion of it here. The generator 53 is red with his red writing. That means it took a generator error. It's in an error condition. So that's the first thing you can look at. If you have one of those, then you have a generator error. Now, one of the problems that you run into with generator errors is that some generators are pretty soft, which means it's easy to recover from them. Some of them are a lot uglier, and what happens is they actually lock up Spooky 2. You can't do anything. You can't change tabs. You can't do any of that stuff. And they can lock up your Windows computer as well, if it's bad enough. And what's happening is internally is that Windows is trying to recover from this communication error, and it keeps going back to the generator saying, well, wait a minute, try it again, try it again. And that's what happens. And so it can't, so Windows can't respond to the Spooky program, so it just is frozen. And like I said, if it's doing it enough, it can actually affect Windows. So you may or may not be able to do anything when you actually have an error. This particular error was pretty soft, and I could still do things. But anyway, yeah, that's the first thing you look for. If you have this red writing on any of your generators, you have a generator error. Next. So down at the bottom, and all these things that you never know what they are. Down here, the two that we care about is the RE and GE. The RE is the number of errors that that Spooky has recorded since it came up. The GE is the generator number, the last number that had an error. So obviously, if you had a bunch of different ones throwing errors or having errors, you might see that. But this is the last one. This could be 10, 20, 50, whatever it is. But this is the last one that got an error. And like I said, on your screen, but when I captured this one didn't have an error. One of these would be in red at the time. Or in this case, maybe it recovered from it. And so it's not an error anymore. But that's another indication. That's a good one. If you have intermittent problems, you'll see these things. You'll see these REs go up and up and up and see the generator, but you won't have a problem. That's because it recovered from it. Well, you still want to know about it because that's, how long can that last? It's going to come back and get you eventually. So watch for that. If you're getting generator errors, definitely check these numbers once in a while and check the numbers, and we'll talk about how to solve them. If it's still running, don't worry about it. You need to solve it eventually, but you don't have to do anything right now. This is the error log. And in this case, generator 53 did not respond. And this is at 5:52 a.m. That's because I pulled the USB cable out of it to create the error. And so, and it'll do these, and especially, if you look at it, it's doing them about every second or less. And so that's why it can really tie up Windows and do bad things to you. But that's here in the error tab. That's where you find that stuff. Most of the time, I'm going to live in the control tab. And so what I'm looking for is this sort of stuff. That's what I see. I almost never look at the error tab because frankly, it doesn't tell me a whole lot other than you got an error and it was this kind of an error, which doesn't help me at all. And so I generally use the control tab to see if I have errors. But I do like looking at the things at the bottom, because if I'm not getting errors, if I don't think I'm getting errors, maybe I took 10 errors in the middle of the night and I need to address that, because I don't like any errors. Any errors will eventually come back and bite you. Okay. So how do we recover from an error? That's a really interesting question. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Since I'm on Facebook, I see a lot of people, well, you can do this and that. And I've told people to do, well, let's do this. If that doesn't work, let's do this. And you go down this list. But frankly, it comes down to two different things from a simplicity point of view. The first one is you do a rescan, and I'll show you where that is in a second. You do a rescan, and that'll go refine your generators, or it won't refine your generators, one of the two. And if it does, great. Then you can figure out what it is later, but you've recovered from it. And what it amounts to is the generator icon will turn back to black and green. If it doesn't work, then a lot of things can happen. It won't fix the problem, or it won't find the generator anymore, which is very common. So, you used to have generator 53 and now it's gone after you did the rescan, that sort of stuff. So essentially there's two things. The first one is, the simple one is this, and that's you click on the utils pull down up here and you click on rescan devices. And what that does is it does the same thing as when you first start Spooky. It goes and scans all the ports looking for generators, and that will reset a generator if it's in a bad state, maybe, or it won't find it if it's in a really bad state, and all of a sudden you'll find, oops, where'd my generator go? But that's the first thing you do. You do a rescan, and you may not be able to do it. Like I said, your Spooky program may be tied up and can't respond to you. Okay, well, that's fine. If it can't, it can't. You're going on the next step. The next step is bigger. The next step is there's 8 steps to go through, and it's important. Don't skip any of them. Make sure they do them all in order, and that'll resolve almost all of your generator errors, like 99%. And those things are, first, you're going to shut your computer all the way down to power off. It's really important to do that. You may not want to, but don't worry, you'll be able to come back in it easily. So shut it down all the way to power off. The second thing you do is turn off the generators, and it could be all of them, one of them, whichever one is giving you trouble, turn it off. Turn the power off. So on the XM computer, there's a little slide switch on the back. On the GX computer, there's an on-off button on the front panel. So power it off. Wait 30 seconds. Then power the generators back on. Once they're back on, then start up your computer, turn it back on. Then start Spooky 2. What you will probably see, is all your generators should show up in the control tab. None of them will be running, but they'll all be there. If they're not all there, then you have a different sort of problem at this point. But it's very, very rare that would not come up. Very rare. Only if you've experienced some sort of serious physical problem outside the generator. And so what you do once you come up, like I said, all your generators they're just sitting there staring at the sky because you just started Spooky. That's what the global pull down's for, which is the next one. Over here in global and resume, which is here's the bigger version of it. If you do a global resume, it will go out and it'll restart all the generators where they were. So it's a little painful when you have to do this, but it's not that painful. It used to be a lot more painful because you'd have to go figure out what you're running on each of them and all that. No. Spooky keeps track of that stuff. Does a really good job of it, as a matter of fact. So you can go out and you can just resume them all, and it's not a problem. I've had some generator errors lately, which I've been working on trying to fix on my system, and I've got the 16 generators on there. It's a pain if I have to reboot the system. Not anymore. I reboot the system, I do a resume all, and then 5 minutes later they're all running, and it did everything on its own. So keep that in mind. It's a very handy little thing to have. So what about other recovery actions? Okay, there are other things you can do but what you're going to see is if you do if you went through the process and you shut everything down and brought it back up and you still can't see the generators or a generator, that suggests an external problem like a port problem, cable problem, a USB problem, a USB hub problem, a lot of things like that. And yes, there are ways to figure out what those are. They're beyond the scope of the presentation I'm doing. Remember, I'm doing Spooky for beginners. That's what I'm trying to do here. And so I don't want to get caught in the weeds because 99.9% of the time, what we just went through is going to solve your generator error. Now, you may get another one 5 minutes from now, but your system will come back up at this point. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's the reason I'm trying to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible. Okay, so how do we fix it? That's the really good part. All right. Plasma is interesting. So if you've read the Plasma manuals, and hopefully you have, if you haven't, you should. There's a number of suggestions that Spooky makes. They say you need to get the plasma ball as far away from the central as possible. You need to get central as far away from possible as the generator and the computer, and you need to use separate power outlets and all that sort of stuff. And those suggestions may or may not work for you. I mean, I've literally worked with someone who, we're doing video for this so I could understand. He had everything stretched out in a linear fashion as far as he could get it. He couldn't use it that way, by the way. There was no way he could do that. But he was just trying to get it working, and we had everything at the end, and it still was taking errors immediately. And I was working with someone 2 days ago, and they had a problem that as soon as they started the plasma, it locked up everything. That's what it did. And he had a pretty good configuration, but it was a hard lockup. And so I understand why they put this in here. I personally don't have a lot of faith in it because I've gone through all this, and it works for some people. And by the way, not everybody has generator errors from plasma. Some people don't ever get it, but they're very common at this point. So, I know, that's their best advice on this. It's just not the advice I use. This is actually my I just took this afternoon. This is what we have here. This is my treatment chair that I use, and right now I have the long tube in it. Here's my Spooky Central over here. It's about 4 feet away from the XM generator, the blue one, which I use to drive it. I have a GX right next to it, which I use all the time while I'm doing this to do remote mode or and I use it for PEMF, although obviously not when I'm doing the plasma, although I could. All that stuff's there. This little bitty black box, that's my computer, by the way. You can send me an email if you want to know more about that. But I mean, this is the whole setup. I don't have a display on it. I don't have a keyboard on it. That is the computer, and it does not pull much power. It's a mini PC, but it works really well for this. So I'm really happy with it. And so I mean, this is my setup, and I do not get generator errors. Doesn't matter what I run on it. And generally, like when I was running it earlier, this was sitting here, right here. So it's really close to the generator. I mean, it works fine. So it all depends on I think on other things. And by the way, that's our Chihuahua spot. It's laying there. All right, so I don't have any problems at the moment. I did before. We've had a few minor issues. When I used to use my Chromebook next to it, my Chromebook, the touchpad on it would be weird. It wouldn't work right. And my wife will sometimes have problems with her iPad if she's propping it up on the plasma tube. But for the most part, we don't get a whole lot of interference with that. That's not a big deal. The big problem you usually have to worry about with this is with the generators, the lockup themselves. So how do we fix this, right? It's actually much easier than it sounds. There's 3 physical suggestions I make to everybody, okay? And it solves 99% of all the plasma problems. The first thing is to replace the USB cable with a Tripp-Lite U23-006. And I have pictures of this in a minute. You need that specific cable because it has filters on each side of it that filter out the RF interference. The USB cable that comes with plasma, and I have pictures of all this in a minute, it has a green filter in it as well, and it does filter stuff out, but sometimes it doesn't filter enough out. That's what it boils down to. My personal advice is, if you're running a plasma, you should replace the USB cable with this one and be done with it so you don't have to worry about it. That's what I really believe. So the second thing is make sure you are using a separate AC wall socket, because the interference does like to travel up the cable for the power supply for the generator. So keep those apart from each other. And if that means you have to run an extension cord for something, do it. It's not a problem if you just want it plugged into a different outlet. And finally, occasionally, the white wires that go to the plasma do radiate quite a bit. So definitely keep it away from the power wires. That's not a big deal. So then this last week, this one guy I helped a couple days ago, like I said, it would lock up instantly. 2 seconds into the frequency, everything would lock up. We replaced the cable on that, and that was it. It was all rock solid from there. We didn't change anything else. So I mean, that's what we did. And the cable is $6 to $10 US. It's a little more wherever you are, but I've had people in Australia order it. I've had people in the UK have to order it. People all over the US and Mexico, and in Canada. So trust me, it's worth it. Get it and be done with it. But so keep the white wires away. So the other one that I had though is I had somebody, and they were having a serious problem. And they actually had I think they had the Tripp-Lite cable, but I can't remember. But you know, it could take a few days to get the Tripp-Lite cable. So we were doing a few things because it was locking up almost immediately. So he sent me a picture of his setup, and he had his long tube right behind the monitor of his computer, and everything else was there as well. I said, well, why don't you need to move this away from, you need to get some distance. And he did, and that took care of the problem. So the distance stuff does help, but in my opinion, you need the Tripp-Lite cable no matter what. And so let's look at those, I think. And by the way, if you find that with these 3 things, you do them all and they don't solve your problems, obviously you can contact customer support. They can help you as well. You can email me at spookytechhelp@gmail.com, and I'll help you figure out how to get this working. I've not had a problem getting it working with anybody. So if you need the help, reach out to me and I'll give you the help for it. This is the original cable that Spooky sent you. And I guess it's a good cable, but that notice it's got the green coil here, and this is the end that plugs into the generator, so it goes right there. And this plugs into your computer. It does have a filter on that end and has the green coil on the other end. And by the way, if you replace this, just put the entire cable, including the coil, somewhere in case you need it some other day, but you won't need it for now. But you don't need to move the coil around. The other cable is self-contained and it answers, it'll take care of everything. But that's what you get with the kit. This is what you're going to replace it with. This is the triplet cable. Notice it has filters, these filters on both ends of it. And like I said, it 99% of the time it fixes any error you have with if it's plasma related. We'll talk about non-plasma in just a minute. So it's worth it. I would spend the money on it and do it. This is the actual page at Amazon for this. And I've been using the 6-foot ones, and right now you can get them for about $6 a piece at Amazon US, because I was looking tonight. And essentially all you need is go to your local Amazon and search on U02300-006, and you'll get it that way. That's the easiest way. I used to have the link in here, but the link, isn't all that helpful to people in this sort of environment. So just search on it and you'll find it. And like I said, I've had people all over the world get it and buy it. Sometimes it can take a week or two to get it, but it's worth it. So that would be what I recommend. It's easy to do. You just take the other one out, plug this thing in, and you'll be in good shape. Now, let's see. Oh, by the way, some people, you can buy these little ferrite things. These snap onto the cable. You can buy them separate. And I had somebody once post, oh, hey, you can buy these separate. It's a lot less money than spending the $10 or whatever it was for cable. And I actually tried it because I wanted to understand what I could do and what works and what I did. And so I actually tried it. It made no difference for me. And so I went back and said, well, I tried this and it didn't work. How did you test it? Never heard anything back from them. So I have tested that. It didn't help for me, but the triplet cable always has. Okay. Now what about if you don't have plasma? You can still get generator errors. Like I said, I'm having generator errors in my configuration here in my den, and I don't have a plasma in here. It's not a plasma issue. And I had generator errors all the way back to when I first got my Spooky, but didn't know what to do with them. I did all kinds of fun things to try to get around them. And I had a procedure to get them back in sync, because what would happen then is I'd have it'd be generator 3, and then you'd reboot or something had happened, it would become generator 24, and that sort of stuff, which drives me insane because I got to know what they are. And so that's a generator error causing that. And so what happens is your generators, the numbers are actually assigned by Windows. So when you plug in a new generator, Windows assigns it a number. And generally it starts with 3 and then goes to 4 and 5 and 6, whatever. So that's what it's going to do. Well, what happens in some generator errors, it takes a generator error, but then it sort of reconnects, but it doesn't connect fast enough or whatever. And Windows decides, oh, this is a new one, so I'm going to assign you to generator 12. And that's how your numbers get messed up. There is a way you can go renumber your generators and put them the way you want, which is why mine looked the way it did, because I want them that way. And they mapped to my physical locations, and so I actually set them that way. And so again, you can check with me, and I can tell you. I have a video that'll tell you how to change your port numbers and make them whatever you want. Okay, so the number one cause are the USB cables themselves. Spooky 2 supplies ones, and I don't know if they're good, bad, or different. I have no way to test them. What I've been doing, and which really makes a difference, if I have a generator that's getting an error, the first thing that's going is the USB cable. And most of my USB cables are original. I've been using the same ones that they sent me in 2018, and with all the orders from them, I use the same ones. But recently I decided, these are probably a problem. And so I started replacing them, and that made a huge difference. So, and you're talking about, $6, $7, $8 a piece. You spend a lot of money on this, and if you want to do them at a time, that's fine. If you want to replace them all at the same time, that's up to you. Whatever you want to do, so you don't have to deal with the generators, because I hate generators. Okay. Next, a poor quality USB hub can also cause problems. So the rule of thumb for that is you want to get a powered USB hub, even though you don't need the power. They tend to be a better quality, and you want to get a name brand. We'll talk about that in a minute. And because you're going to say, well, what is a name brand? And I have an answer for that in the next slide, I think, or the slide after that. So if you have a bad quality USB hub, that can cause problems as well. I've heard mixed reviews on the Spooky one. I had one originally. I don't use it anymore because I have more generators than it would hold, and so I got a 16 port one, and I've been pretty happy with it. You can also have problems with the USB port on your computer. I mentioned that earlier. So if you're having, and what happens when you have that? Generally, what you'll see is if oh yeah, you had a generator error on 3, and then 6 hours later it was on 7, and so on and so forth. And so, especially if you're seeing a lot of different ones, it may be a port on the computer. If you think that's what it is, try moving the generator USB hub to another port on the computer, and see if you can identify that. Here's a here's a secret to a good, well-kept secret to laptop computers. It's the one downside to buying a used one, by the way, although I use used ones all the time, is that the USB ports on laptop computers weren't made to be moved around a lot. They were made to, oh, you're going to plug a stick in here and you use the stuff, you're going to take it back out, and then a week from now you're going to do it again, that sort of stuff. It wasn't that you were going to move things around. And what I see people doing with Spooky is they plug in their generator or generators to it, and then they're sitting there and they'll move the computer to their lap, or they'll move it around the desk. I mean, do all kinds of stuff. Well, that's really, really hard on that USB port. Believe it or not, they will eventually start to decay, and they'll start giving you problems. And there's no way to fix them other than replace the motherboard, because they're part of the motherboard. So generally, they're not worth doing. I've seen people who, what they do is, and my friend who got me into Spooky had to do this. He put a whole bunch of glue or epoxy on this thing to keep it from moving, because the port on the computer was in bad shape. So one of the things you need to know about that, but what you need to do is, when you're using your computer, you don't want to be moving it around while it's hooked up to cables. It's really bad for the ports. And I realize that can be a challenge for some people, but it's a question of, do you want to preserve the port or not? Because if the port goes bad, now you have to get a new computer. So keep that in mind. And if you decide you're going to buy a used computer, once you plug things into it, make sure you can wiggle around. It doesn't have a problem, because it's really easy for the people that are refurbishing them not to see that. They plug in something to it, it works, voila, I'm done. And they don't actually move it around and see if that's going to make a difference. So that's a check. If you decide to buy one, you can do that. Most of the time it works fine. I'm just pointing out, but I definitely wouldn't be moving the computer around with a cable hooked up to it. Okay, now it's possible you can have another USB device that has a cause of a problem. It's kind of hard to explain, but it actually works a lot like the old. If you go back as far as I do, you remember the old Christmas tree lights that one burned out and they all went out. USB stuff, serial ports are like that as well. It's a serial sort of deal. So you can have one that causes problems, and it can cause problems with all of them, which is what number 5 is, the cascading problem. You could have something that's a USB that has a serious problem, and it can cause problems in your Spooky USBs. Or you can have a Spooky USB that's causing problems for the rest of them. So what I tend to do is, if I see that I've got 4, all of a sudden I have 4 generators that are in generator error, the place I'm going to concentrate first is the lowest number. I mean, that's literally what I would do. And that's the first cable I'd replace, or whatever I'm going to do for that. Okay, so this is actually the cable I've been using lately that I've been replacing mine with. It's a 5-foot USB A to B printer cable. Honestly, I would, you may or may not like Amazon, but I would buy the cable from Amazon. I'll tell you, when you go down to your local office supply store. That's, it's really interesting. Those accessories are the highest markup thing in the store, and they buy the cheapest ones they can, and they mark them up 300 or 400%, literally. And so, I tend to like the stuff from Amazon. They have a better selection, and they have name brands. Well, I've never heard of Ugreen before, which is why I look at the ratings. This is a 4.5 rating, and it's got 45,000 reviews. That's a good sign. When you go to Amazon, it's got 6 reviews. There, 3 of them are from the same person, and the other 3 are from his brother. So keep that in mind. So that's one of the things I look at when I'm looking at this. And you don't need long cables unless you want long cables. You don't have to buy 10-foot cables or 6-foot cables. It's not a big deal. So I mean, and literally, I just bought 3 of these because I'm working on this generator error problem that I occasionally have, and it's been rock solid since I replaced them, and I just did them all. So the other thing we talked about was USB hubs. USB hubs, again, I like high quality ones. I chose this one because TP-Link is a known entity. It's a very reputable company. The price is, you can get them for a lot less money than this, but you don't want to go cheap on a USB hub. But you can get this for $10 with the same number of ports. Don't bother. Spend the money on this. Notice again, this one has 4,500 reviews, and it's rated at 4.5. So I consider that a good sign, and TP-Link is a known name brand. Boy, that was everything. It took a lot less time to go through it than it did to write this thing. Let me tell you. Okay, so what we learned today, we talked about what exactly are generator errors. We talked about what causes generators, and how to identify you have an error. How do I recover from an error, and how do I fix it so I don't get them anymore because they're a pain? One of the things you're going to get from Spooky is you're going to get something that sends you a link to do a review of the presentation. It really helps me out and helps Spooky out if you answer those. It helps me get a better rating, and I get to do more presentations, and you get to see more of the stuff I do. But it also helps Spooky to understand what people want to see. So keep that in mind. When you get that, if you'd fill it out, that'd be very helpful. Okay, there's also some really nice Spooky training resources. The first one is in the Spooky 2 software. It's a user's guide. To get to that, all you have to do is click on help, and it's the user's guide's right in there. So you don't have to worry about losing it. It's right there, and it's not perfect, but it's where you can find most of the details on what this means and what that means and how to hook this up and that sort of stuff. It's pretty good. You should go through it at least once just to go through it and see what's in it, because someday it's going to come in handy for you. The quick start guide, actually, that's quick start guide. Yes, you can get that in File Explorer. And obviously, the quick guide that you got with the machine is pretty good too. I see it as an illustrative reference. I'm not too impressed with it from a how do I go do a sample digitizer biofeedback scan, for instance. But it's in there if you can find it. But it's still good to be familiar with it, and they did a good job on the illustrations in it. The next one is vimeo.com/spooky2. That's where Spooky's keeping their official videos these days. And that's not the only place you can get it, but that's one of the places you can go to get these. And like this one will be available in a few days. This is Wednesday here. Yeah, hopefully by Friday or Saturday of our time, or definitely by next Monday of our time. Then there's the Spooky 2 Academy event list, and that's where events are posted. That's where you can sign up for stuff, and you can watch the videos of past sessions. And finally, the YouTube, Spooky does have their own channel there, and it's pretty good, although you have to be careful because it goes back to so far back you can't believe it. If you're going to look at videos, especially in YouTube, don't bother to look at any videos before 2023, because there's all kind of things where that software doesn't match yours, or the hardware doesn't match yours, or whatever. That doesn't mean there's no value in them, but especially if you're new, you don't want to get confused. That's what it boils down to. That's why I recommend look at the new ones. Okay, so closing, I hope you found the session useful. Video in a few days. Please email me if you have some topics you think would be worthwhile to cover, or if you have questions about anything, because I do my best to answer those. and I answer things in Facebook as well. It's not a problem for me to do that. That's what I'm doing these days. So I will do my best to answer whatever questions you have. Oh, good. Now we're into the QA, which is one of my favorite parts. So I got to find it on here. So this is the time we're going to do question and answer. Like I said, I will strive to answer any question you have, whether it's for this or not, but it definitely has to be spooky related. Okay. The first one, we have a net. This is not a generator error question, but it just happened to me. I'm not finding anything in the forum. Unfortunately, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's the next one. Okay, so we're done with that one. Annette, I tried to edit the BFB database file and found I must have a format error. Uh-oh, so it was not found. I can't get the BFB read at all. I have noticed that the bad file with the good one, reload the software. Okay, so the biofeedback database file is actually BFB results. So I can't remember what it is, and it's in the C:\spooky2 directory. And so let me show you a couple things for that. I should have this open here. Where am I? That's it. Hopefully you're seeing my Spooky2 screen. Let me look at chat. Okay. So if you can see my Spooky2 screen, I'm in a presets tab. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, now. So there's a couple things to consider here. Okay. Number one, if we go into system, come on, system. There it is. In system, you can actually see what the biofeedback database says. See, it's checked. We'll make sure yours is checked. And it's in C Spooky2 BFB under our preferences.csv. That's where this biofeedback database is. All right. And so it's important to know that. And if yours is super corrupted, you can just delete it. Okay. And then restart Spooky. And when you do another BFB, it'll create a new one. All right. If you're trying to fix it, that's another matter. There's several things you can maybe do for that. If nothing else, if you can't figure out what's wrong, you can email it to me and I might be able to fix it because it can get kind of ugly. But if you need to change anything in your biofeedback, that's up here in database. And then we can go into, so a database pull down, edit biofeedback database, and it brings up this neat little program. And in here, you could delete things, you can rename things. You can actually change this 180. That's the default 12. So if you did some Stephanie Ah stuff and now you have ones out there that have a 0.5 and they should be 180, that's how you change them. Again, so that was, let me close this. That's here in database and edit biofeedback database. So that's my best answer for you, Annette, of what you can do. So, and you, especially if you had problems, what you're going to find is you're going to go into the systems tab and you're going to find the biofeedback data set is not checked. That's really common. I don't know why it does it, but I've seen it do it a couple times once there's errors, and you may have to go back a couple times and turn it back on, but eventually it'll decide it stays on. That's likely the problem you have. Let's move on. Elizabeth, I cannot load one GenX Pro without duplicating the other, without it duplicating to the other generator on GenX Pro. Need to free this up. Also ran PMF on one side last night. And after that, I could not run both generators for a remote computer. To run the loaded program in HG1 that would be, but otherwise one side works. I wish I understood what you're talking about. If we look in here, control, this is my generator X. They're two separate generators. I can run presets here. I can run, okay. I'll go drop this on. I can run this on this generator, overwrite, click 3, and start it. And so now it's running that. And then I can run heal, remote, this one, which I can't pronounce, over here, and overwrite generator 4, and start it. And they're both running at the moment. So I'm not sure what the problem is. You can ask another question. You could send me an email because we may need to sort of send some pictures of the screen because I don't understand what do you mean duplicating to the other generator. I'm not sure I understand that. But that's the best answer I can give you at the moment. Okay, why do some older computers sometimes have trouble connecting the USB in the computer? Often I go to the message there could be an error. Could be a hard drive failing to cause the error. Unlikely. So here's a couple issues with that. Number one is there's a ongoing problem with computers that have an AMD processor in them. Those are usually the newer ones, I might add, that they have real problems connecting to the generators at this point. And that is some sort of not fun hardware problem with the drivers. And that's not something we're going to fix. Actually, the manufacturer of our generators needs to try to get whoever wrote the drivers to work with AMD. That's what it boils down to. And so there's no good. Well, there is something I've seen people do, and they'll go out and they'll get themselves a USB hub and plug it in the computer, and then everything works fine. You might want to try that because USB hubs aren't that much money. You can go spend $20 or $30 at Walmart if you want. Plug that in. If it doesn't work, then take it back. But that's the only thing that I have for you. I mean, and one of my computers is a 14-year-old Windows 7 laptop, still running Windows 7, and it runs Spooky just fine. As a matter of fact, I have an older XP that I've used in the past, and it runs fine. So I don't have a hard answer for you other than that, especially since it's intermittent. So let me know if that doesn't work out for you. If you need some more ideas, we'll see what we can do for you. Does the antivirus software interfere with the generator when it's updating? Never. In my opinion, it shouldn't make any difference to that at all. That's number one. Number two, the only antivirus software I use on anything is Windows Defender, which comes in it. It's free, and it doesn't slow down the computer. That's a philosophical point, but I think it works virtually as well as the rest of them. And frankly, if you're using the computer for just Spooky, you really don't even need an antivirus program, to be perfectly honest, because you're not out surfing the net or downloading things from your email or that sort of thing. The last thing is updating. I have a Gen X Pro that I got in October in 2023. And so it needs to be updated, and I don't bother. The reason I don't bother is I don't like doing firmware changes. Basically, what they did on the update was that there is a case where you're running the GX Pro offline, so it's not hooked up. It has a math problem. It has a calculation problem in certain situations. Well, I don't do that. And so I've not ever bothered to put on the update, and you don't have to. And the only reason you need to is if you're doing some of this odd stuff in offline mode. Other than that, you don't need to do it. So that's my opinion. But I do not believe that the antivirus software can interfere with the generator for when it's updating. Generally speaking, I'm not aware of any antivirus software that get in the middle of a serial connection or ESP connection. They operate at a different level than that. At least that's been my experience. Okay, Jeremy, I have 20 XM generators. I was running 9 XM generators, 1 Gen X Pro on a desktop running Spooky 10, a Spooky 10 port hub. When I had another 10 port hub, the computer did not work. Not very hardware competent. So now I have another 10 on a laptop. Can you suggest how I can run 20 generators on one computer? That's a complex question. I'll do my best to answer it simply. What happens is that the internal hardware on the USB hub limits how many actual things you can have on there. The theoretical limit is you can have 128 or 256, I don't remember which. And that's the theoretical side, but not all the hardware actually supports that. So there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, because what you're trying to do is something called daisy chaining, I assume. That's where you have one USB hub and you plug another one into it. And so now if you had 10, you just took about, you had 9 on that one and you had 10. So now you theoretically have 19 ports. That's one scenario. But like I said, I've seen situations where the hubs don't really support that. So one of the things you can do is you can plug the other USB hub into a separate port on the computer. That may work. Okay, that's one possibility. If they're the same model USB manufacturing model, then it probably won't make any difference. But if they're not, you could try doing the other one, plug it in first and plug the original Spooky one into that one. and see if it works in that direction. And if that doesn't work, then you're into the new USB hub approach. I mean, you can get commercial hubs that go up a whole bunch. I know Brad Johnson has one that does 50 ports or something. He's got 2 of them. And so, that's a possibility. Those are the best ones, best ideas I can give you. If you buy the ports at a local store and they don't work for you, you can always take them back because, I tried this and it didn't work. And generally, you can probably get your money back for that. But that's the directions I'd try for that. Like I said, I've got 15 running on here, but I have a 16 port one that I bought because I had a 10 port I bought, and I was getting weird errors on it, and it's some weird off brand. So I decided I think on this one, I spent about $80 or $90 on this, but I wanted to get a good one. So that's what I did. So good luck with that. If you need anything else, email me because I'd love to find out what you do on this. Bobby, how do I migrate Spooky with all its presets, programs, and biofeedback to another PC with freshly installed? Here's what I would do. You probably won't find the same, and I've done this before. What I would do is I would copy the entire Spooky 2 folder onto a stick, to a USB stick. And then what you do is you take that and you copy it into your new computer, and you can overwrite what's there. It doesn't make any difference. Overwrite everything that's there. All right. So now you've got all that stuff on there. And then what you do is install Spooky on top of that. So you reinstall Spooky on top of that. So everything will be pointing to the right stuff. And then you'll have all the stuff you had before, all of your biofeedback, all of your custom stuff, all your presets will all be there. As a matter of fact, now what won't be there is Spooky keeps track of what's on each generator, but it does that by generator numbers. So if the generator numbers stayed the same, you're in good shape. If not, then that data is going to be out of date, and so that's not going to work out for you. But you'll just load whatever you want on each one and run it, and that won't be a problem. So again, that's what I would do. I copy everything to a stick, then take that stick, copy everything to the new computer, and then install Spooky 2 on top of the new computer, and that will work just fine. There's some detailed things you can get into, but there's no point in it. This is the simple thing. Ray, I have an XM generator that was flaky. Ugh. Support had me take apart the generator, then remove the cable and put it back. Ooh, they reseated the cable. That's what we used to call it. For a while, but it kept going flaky. Now it's failed completely. Any thoughts? So I assume you've reseated it again and reseated anything else. I've actually not been into the guts of mine. I could, but I have no reason to, and so I didn't. I would be reseating the cable or all the cables. And the other thing and I don't know, flaky is really interesting because it can mean anything. For me, what I'd be doing is I'd try to be wiggling the connector around and see if it's got a good seat on that. Maybe if you're using it and it gets a generator error or something, if you wiggle it around and it starts getting generator error, it's got a loose connection, and you might be able to take that somewhere and get the connector resoldered in. That's a possibility. If none of that works out, you're back to customer support and see what they're willing to do for you. If you gave a new one, it worked for a little while, it's doing the same thing again, then it's probably another problem, and they may replace it for you. But that's a customer support issue. And if you're not aware of this, I don't work for Spooky, and neither do any of the presenters, and neither do any of the people on Facebook. So all we can do is, well, here's what we think, and they don't listen to me, and so I have no way to grease the skids or, here, call Frank here. I can't do any of that for you. But I'd reseed it. I'd be wiggling it around while it's in use and see if that'll make a difference. There's nothing in an XM that's dangerous to you. Nothing. The voltages are too low. You could lay your tongue across it and it would hurt a little bit, but that's all. So don't worry about that. Other than that, like I said, it's customer support time. I hope you get this solved as quickly as possible. Okay. Now we are on SS, whoever SS is. Okay, on the control tab, okay, the generator button is green, but the rest the text is red. Yes, I covered that. The generator is still on. Yeah, sort of. That is a generator error. So what happens, and I didn't cover this in probably should have in the presentation. So you're running along, running some preset, and one of the things that happens with all the generators is Spooky says, like in this example here, generator, run frequency 256 at this whatever. And it's going to run that. So notice this is every second it's going to update it. And so every second it's going to tell it, run generator 256, run frequency 256, and so on and so forth. So that's what it's going to do. If what happens is, if the generator takes an error, generally what happens is the generator said, well, the last thing I was told to do was run frequency 256, and it'll run that forever, ad infinitum. And so you have to go into the recovery process for that. And probably with that, you can try to do the rescan. And if that doesn't work, then it's power off everything and power back on. Then it should reset that. That's how you recover from that. But if that's what happens, when you have a generator error, that means that your computer is not talking to that generator anymore. And the generator says, whatever I was told to do last, that's what I keep doing. Because that's why Spooky, every second it's talking to it. So every second, so when it goes from 256 to 384, when it times out, the next second it's going to say, oh, okay, now run 384. And it'll run that forever until the software tells it to do different, and the software can't tell it to do different. So it'll run it forever. So yes, if you have red writing, you have generator error, and you have to go through the recovery process. I hope that helps. Bobby C. How do I migrate Spooky 2 with all presets? Did I answer this? Yes. Yeah, that's still the same answer. Copy the whole thing to a USB stick, the entire Spooky 2 folder. Then copy it onto the new computer, the entire thing, and it'll go to the same place, the Spooky 2 folder. So overwrite everything there, and then install Spooky on top of that, and everything will work fine. All right, so Carrie, could you talk about how to find the screen to run the Spooky generator? My computer says Spooky is already running. Oh yeah, it's tiny screen. I click OK, that's it. Okay, okay, so there's a couple things you could do, which you should be able to see. One of the things that happens is down here in the taskbar, you should have a Spooky 2 that sort of looks like that. This is, what is this? Oh shoot, this is Windows 7. Anyway, but it still looks like this. And you should be able to just click on that and it should come up. If it doesn't, the next thing you can do, because there's a lot of variables here, is you can do an Alt Tab. So press the Alt key and Tab, and that'll take you through the various things that are open. Obviously, I have a bunch of things open, but we'll go back to Spooky Test. So that's generally how you can find it. Now, by the way that happens is because it takes so long for Spooky to come up, you end up with two of them. It tries to start two. That's one of the reasons that when I start Spooky 2, what I do is I never double click on it. I right click on it. Come on, come back. And then I left click on open. That way I know I clicked open, because sometimes when I double click too fast and it doesn't understand it's supposed to open. So that's how I would find it. So hopefully that'll help you. If not, let me know. Marilyn, hi Marilyn, how you doing? Marilyn and I trade things once in a while. Okay. Given a common issue is the USB cable, why does it spin? Let me finish this. Given a common issue is USB cable, why doesn't Spooky supply better cables? It would save hundreds of people from having to spend more money on Amazon. Okay. I can't answer that, Marilyn. I've asked the same question. I've sent them, I've done reports saying, hey, this cable fixes the problem. Why don't you use it? And it's, well, I've referred that to engineering. Any of those sort of questions, you're going to have to take up with customer support. I cannot tell you why they don't have better cables. I can't tell you why they're not using that the triplet cable instead of the green coil cables. I cannot tell you that. I don't even have, definitely don't have an opinion I'll express here. And any opinion I have would only be a guess. I have no inside information at all. The only good part is that, here's what you need to do. Now, keep in mind, Marilyn, Spooky is an experimental device, process, and everything else. And, while they say that, oh yeah, well, they tell you that, trust me, it's true. And you can tell because they're not a software development company. Look at Spooky 2. Look at the documentation. They're definitely not a software development company. They're a hardware development company a little bit, and they develop things to run on it, and they have a platform called Spooky 2 to run it on. And so, they're not Microsoft is what it boils down to. And so I'd like them to solve all these things, but it is an experimental device. And if it costs you a few extra bucks to get it working the way you want, then you just have to suck it up and do it. Sorry. But those questions about why don't you actually put better cables in, that's a question for customer support. Good luck. Charlotte, using plasma and have done everything Michael suggested with fixing generator, except changing the cables. Having said that, why does plasma stop each time there's a frequency change? It does it all the time, it's every time. Well, it has to do with the error. So what's happening is it's probably building up some static somewhere, and when it actually switches frequencies, it has a spike or whatever, and that causes it. Trust me, replace the cable. It's the first thing like I said, if you have a plasma, you should replace the cable, whether you're getting the errors or not. That's the way I really feel about it. It's not that much money. Do that. It's fixed. Almost everyone, not all of them, almost every generator I've ever seen associated with plasma, the cable will fix. So, spend the money, get the cable and see if that solves it. If not, reach out to me because I'd love to know if it doesn't, because I'm always trying to figure out what else I can suggest. I do have another thing you can buy, which costs even more, that supposedly helps that, and I've got one because I wanted to try it, and it didn't really make a difference, but I think other people it has, but it's not part of the 99.9%, which is what I'm trying to cover. So do the cable first. If that doesn't work, let me know. Paul, my Spooky Plasma black cables have BNC connectors. Okay, so there's actually 3 cables you get with the green with the green coil in it. 2 of them are BNC connections. Those go from out 1, out 2 of the generator to the front of the Spooky Central. The 3rd cable is a USB cable. So it's a USB A to B. So it has a flat side that goes into the computer, and that has a little square side that goes into the generator. And so, that's the difference between them. So hopefully, and it's possible that when they send them to you, they didn't send you the right cables. So I don't know, but that's what the black ones are for. The black ones, the BNC, go between the generator and the Spooky Central. And so, and obviously, how could a replacement be made? Well, I don't know what you're using for a USB cable right now, but that's the one we're talking about, is replacing the USB cable that goes from the computer to the generator. I hope that helps. Roberta, let's see. Do we leave all errors in the error section or we delete them? You can delete them if you want. Doesn't make any difference because the next time you restart Spooky, it clears all that out. It doesn't keep them forever. It only keeps them for the session. So it's up to you what you do with the error log. Okay, Bruce? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I have a generator with a blank screen, no numbers or letters, but still is generating frequencies. Is that a concern? I have one of those too. That's because I dropped it, or I dropped something on it. I was traveling once, and it was in a bag with a bunch of other stuff, and I think something hit it and broke the display. No, you don't care about the display. It doesn't make any difference one way or the other. If everything's still working on it, then don't worry about it. Yes, you could contact Spooky support. They could send you a new display screen for it. Who knows what that's going to cost, but it doesn't make any difference. I mean, especially for the XM, actually, for the XM, when do you ever look at the screen? I mean, I never look at the screen. Actually, the generator, the blue generator I showed in the picture that runs my Spooky Central, that's the one with the broken screen. So don't worry about it. Okay, Pat, you're next. Why does my biofeedback sometimes show mostly essential oils when I do a reverse lookup? I do not use it as diagnostic tests, though I do check the frequencies. Well, I mean, the reverse lookup, obviously, all it's doing is saying, well, I found these frequencies and what programs have similar frequencies in them, because they have to be within a tolerance, and they could be harmonics. And I don't know if you're probably checking subharmonics most likely for that. Frankly, if you're going to do, if you are going to do, but number one, let's talk about reverse lookup. I'm not a believer in a reverse lookup at all. Occasionally I look at it just for grins to see when I'm going to die. I mean, because it can find everything in the world. So, but there is a case where I like reverse lookup actually, and that's to verify something. If the doctor or test showed that I had a kidney disease, and I used the sample digitizer, used my urine, and did a reverse lookup on it. Anything that had to do with kidneys, I'd consider running them because it has to do with kidneys. I don't care about the rest of it because it's like, oh, I have athlete's foot. That's not what we're trying to do. So in that case, I may try to find things that pertain to my known issue. That's the first thing. The other thing is, if you're going to do a reverse lookup, one of the things you should do is go to the programs tab and uncheck the sample. I'd uncheck the SD database, and I'd uncheck, actually, that's what that stuff is, I think, or whatever it is. And I'd also uncheck which one's the other one? Since I have Swookie up. Let's see, programs. I would not, well, I wouldn't, I'd have BFB unchecked because those are my previous biofeedbacks. I wouldn't bother with molecular weight because, gee, I'm trying to find frequencies to kill a pathogen. My pathogens aren't in the molecular weight. The SD, that's the sample digitizer where the oils are. There's no point in scanning those either. DNA is another matter. You may want to consider that, but I definitely wouldn't scan with those on. That way you won't get any oil ones. But the reason you get them is because the programs have a similar frequency to what the sample, or what the biofeedback found. Okay, Jennifer. The booster does not have a light. The Genix, Amazon, and Richard software. There's RoboTouch. Also no light. The booster has a light. Okay, all those lights are dependent on the frequency and the amplitude, by the way. And so, for instance, if you run a terrain and you run the half-volt one, it won't light up anything because there's not enough voltage. So that's one possibility. The next possibility is that what happens with those LED lights, they only operate at a certain speed. And as the frequencies get higher and higher, they don't blink back and forth. They just sort of stay on, and they're dimmed until they're not on at all. And the ones on the boost stay on longer, but they do the same thing. So the advice, number one, I don't worry about it. If you're worried about it, what you do is put a remote on it and run the generator signal test. That is in presets and home and miscellaneous and generator signal test. So you run that on the generator, and what you'll see is that the lights on the remote are flashing back and forth slowly. If it does that, everything's fine. Like I said, I don't even bother with the lights most of the time because they don't matter. But if you're worried about it, run this test. If it works, everything's fine, and then you don't worry about what the lights are doing. I hope that helps. Done. Okay. Margaret. I have two XM generators that show off in red on the display. I rescan, they show up in my web, they do not actually connect. Well, if they're red, like red like this, that's normal. They're stopped. They're not doing anything. If they show up, if you do a rescan and they show up in here, that means that that Windows found them, and you should be able to do something. Again, what you could do with that is run generator signal test on it and see if you can talk to it. Because when you run that signal test, and it's a known amount, that's really slow too. So you override generator on generator 3, start. And what you'll see is on the, like I said, you'll see the flash back and forth. So the generators that show off show off in red on their display. Okay, so that means the little red button's on. They go to on, but they don't go to on until you load something and start running it. So if you do a start on it and that doesn't happen, well, if that doesn't happen, and this goes black over green like this, that suggests that you're not looking at the right generator. Which, by the way, I mean, that sounds weird, but one of the things that I see more often than I'd like to is that people don't know what the generator numbers actually are. That's what it boils down to. I actually did a video on this, I think. I think I did a video on this. I'll have to go look. So if you go into utils and do I identify generators, okay? What you'll see in all the generators, where did I put that? Um, um, all the generators will have an identification on them. And so the XMs, no, the GXs will be on the display. It'll say G1, then it'll have the port number, and G2 in the port number. The XMs are a little different. In the frequency of the last 3 or 2 digits of the frequency, it actually has the generator number. So what could be happening is you're not on the generator you think you are. And like I said, that happens more often than you could understand. And so I'll have to look and see if I actually have a video on that. I know I just did that. I had something on it to show what they do. If you can't find anything on it, email me and I will send you, because I got pictures of it. I have something of it that shows that stuff. But there's also the poor man's way of doing that. Global stop. Okay. Stop all your generators and go generator signal test. And I'm going to put that into generator 3. Click on that and then I hit start. Then I go and look and see which one of the generators comes on. And whatever generator that is, I take one of those nifty white round things that we put nails in. I stick that on the generator and write the generator number on it, because you can get confused really easily. I mean, I know it sounds dumb, but that may be what's happening. I've seen that before, where people think they're running the generator 3 is this one, and it's not. So like I said, the poor man's way is stop all generators, go through them one by one, and see which one turns on. Let me know if you need more help with that. Bruce again. Okay, is not being able to see the generator screen a concern? No. You're talking about the screen on the generator itself. No, I don't care about it. I never use it. I mean, the only time I ever use it was what we just described. If I want to see I'm trying to figure out which one it is, I might want to look at the little on or off indicator on the XM, or I might want to look at the stuff on the GX. But I don't ever look at them other than that. If I know they run, and I can tell that by generator signal test, then they run. So I don't worry about it. I mean, yes, if you want to spend money to get it fixed, you can, but I have other things I'd rather spend money on. Okay, Robert had a problem with biofeedback scan with baseline, taking 2 hours, ended up being default min read delay just as fast as yours. Okay, so number one, I'm not a believer in baseline. Most of the experienced people on the Facebook don't run baseline ever. Baseline was a nifty idea. I remember what came out because I was using Spooky at the time. The concept was we'll do a baseline, and that way we can find all the noise and filter it out later. But the reality was it just didn't seem to make that much difference. So I don't run baseline. The second thing has to do with the min read delay. The min read delay of 0.07, that's how long the software is going to wait that amount of time between each frequency. And it adds up. It adds up a lot when you're scanning a lot of frequencies. And yes, you can set it to 0 there if you want to do that. I don't. I use defaults. One of the things that I've decided a long time ago is the people who develop Spooky and who are improving all the time know more than me. Sometimes I wonder about that, but they certainly know a lot more about Rife stuff than I do. I mean, I may know more about computer stuff or installation stuff or whatever than they do, and I probably do. But why you should wait 0.07 seconds versus not wait at all, or that sort of stuff, I don't have a clue. What I know is that's the current default. And so if you do a regular contact mode biofeedback, which by the way is in here, presets, and home, biofeedback, generator X, that's regular contact mode. And we'll use a general. We're going to plop that into this one. It's going to take about 18 minutes and 54 seconds. That's down here. That's what it takes. Now, this is your min read delay. If I change that to 0, now it only takes 6.5 minutes. But what did I just do to the accuracy of it? I can't tell you. That's the whole point. I mean, and I've heard pros and cons of this, but again, I can't tell you if that's better or worse. Now, if yours is taking 2 hours, so what happens is, if we do the same thing, and this is, so we go back to 0.07, back to 1854, and you check the baseline before, it'll go double. Go on, go double. Because it's going to run through twice. If yours is taking 4 hours, that's because you're doing a sample digitizer. Sample digitizers take a lot longer. The sample digitizer, we pop that into a generator. It takes 37 minutes just for a normal one to run. So double that with baseline, that took 1 hour and 15 minutes. You said yours took 2 hours. So your other possibility is the fine resolution biofeedback scan. The fine resolution biofeedback scan takes 3 hours and 52 minutes. And it's doing that because it actually it checks each frequency twice, and it goes through the whole list 3 times. And that's without the baseline. If we turn the baseline on, it went to 7 hours and 38 minutes. Now, obviously, like I said, you can change this if you want down to 0. And some people have done that, and that is your choice. But I can't tell you if that's good, bad, or indifferent. And I haven't found anybody who could tell me whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody has opinions on it, but I'm not aware of anybody who's actually done any serious testing or whatever. I just know that, oh, Joe said you can do this and it works fine. And Fred said, no, that really affects the accuracy. That's all I can tell you. Good luck, Robert. Okay, Jeremy. Thank you. Okay, thank you for your comprehensive answer. Much appreciated. Done. Okay. Vesa? Okay. Can I set 3 programs to run one right after another in contact mode? Well, one of the problems I find with especially new people is the difference between presets and programs. So programs are here in the Programs tab. These are programs, okay? So if I want to run, someday it'll come back. Yep. If I want to run programs and contact mode. So I go to use a program, I first have to get a preset. I have to get a shell preset. So I go in here, I get a shell preset, I get contact mode. We'll call it healing, because I'm lazy. Let's say healing. Healing contact JW, which is the default one I usually use. Yes, there's a bunch of other ones in here, but I'm not going to talk about that. And then I decide I'm going to run some chakras, red flu. Yes, I can add all the ones in here I want, and they'll just run one after another. This is going to run for 1 hour and 39 minutes. So yes, you could add 3 programs to a contact mode shell preset. But the other question you might be asking, because people get this confused all the time between programs and presets. And oh, by the way, if you go back far enough in software, there were no presets. Everything had to be done manually. If we go in here and we look at, let's look at, no, I don't want to do that. Frequency feeds, no. Environmental? What's in this? Okay, nah, that's for killing things. I don't want to do that. Let's go at miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is always fun. Let's go into contact mode. So let's assume I wanted to run these first 3, if I want to run them sequentially, that is what a chain is for. That's what chain. So these are presets, and to run multiples, I have to chain them together. It means glue them together. So I have to take this one, add it to the bottom, take this one, add it to the bottom, take this one, add it to the bottom. Now I have 3 that'll run sequentially. But then it's a little different. I now have to save it. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to call it 1-test chain. So that's what I'm going to name it, 1-test chain. So now to actually run it, I have to go in here into my user directory, and it's right there, 1-test chain. Now I can take that, I can plop it into a generator and run it to my heart's content. Notice there are 3 presets. All this information up here is for the first preset. It's going to run 1 hour for 57 minutes. Then it goes on to the next preset. Hopefully that answers your question. I know it's in a hurry, but that's what it is. If that doesn't work, I have some videos on how to do chaining in a 4 or 5 minute preset. But it does what I just did. Bessie. Hello, Bessie. When I run plasma, the light in the long tube flashes purple, and I hear different pitch sounds with the different frequencies. When the frequency is not accompanied with light flashing, when the sound is very loud, the same frequency does it the same way every time. I pause the remotes. I've hanged up the USB cable. That doesn't change. Is this a problem? I assume the light doesn't flash. It sounds extremely loud. Is that normal? Okay. The answer is yes, it can be normal. There are times that mine does not flash, but just because it's not flashing doesn't mean it's not emitting the frequencies. And so yours is working most of the time. I would not worry about it. yeah, I know the sound is loud, and normally when it's making any sounds, it's working fairly very well. The only test you could do is it came with a high voltage pen, if you can find it. I don't know what happened to mine, that you can actually hold against one of the white wires, and it'll tell you if voltage is going through it. The reason they put that in there is in case there's a problem. But here's the deal. I mean, if it's working most of the time, there's a 90%, 99% chance it's still working. It's just you can't see the light. I don't see that as a problem. So if you can find the white pen, you can test it and see if it's running voltage in there. But that's the best I can offer. But at this point, I wouldn't worry about it. Kim, if you pause a preset for an extended period of time, have you experienced the program freeze? No. When you do a pause, so if we go on my computer right here, I'm going to pause generator 3. I clear it. Oops. So it's supposed to be running. Click. Okay. See, it's running. If I do a pause, then this goes this, and the Spooky 2 program has told the generator, I'm not sending you anything more. You're just going to wait for the next thing I tell you to do. So you can pause it forever you want, and the generator isn't doing anything during that time. That the freeze thing and run constantly, that's only for generator error. Because when I did a pause, I told it to stop. Monica, it's alive. The mini computer. Yeah, if you'll send me an email, that's spookytechhelp@gmail.com. I'll talk to you about the mini computers. And there's mostly pros, but a few cons. But I like them. Actually, I have 3 spooky systems here, and 2 of them are mini computers. And so I really like them. They suck up almost no electricity if you're somewhere that's a problem. And they're very reliable. They don't generate any heat, and they don't take up any space. So yes, the best thing to do is send me an email for that, because there's some moderate technical stuff to set it up. So we can do that. So yes, I just get them from Amazon. That's not a problem. Okay, Carrie Anthony. Oh, by the way, you can get them from places like Temu, but I don't trust them. Amazon, if it doesn't work, it's going back and I get my money back. Okay, Carrie, is there anything else I could try? Alt-Tab didn't do anything. Well, Carrie, I don't know what's on your system at the moment. What I'd recommend you do, and there's several things that can do. Let me think. So there's a couple things you do. I'm assuming you have the Spooky Tooth icon down at the bottom of the page. If you right click on it, oops, oh, there it is. You'll get this sort of thing. You can close it. Oh, shoot, I can't do it there. Let me see if I can do it again. Oh, dang, this is it's Windows 7. I'm sorry, I'm feeling Windows 7. Okay, so let's go into, no, I don't want to do any of that things. Let's minimize this. Q&A. Let me see what I can find here. Oh, let me get out of this. Here, get out of this so I can see it. And if we go in here, my Vivaldi, and right click on it. Okay. What you may see, it's got the same things. There's no restore in it. Okay. No. What does that mean? So that means if we have that situation, here's what you can do is if you can right click on it and close window, see if that works, if it closes. If it closes, then what I would do is I would right click on the Spooky 2 icon and do an open and see if it opens. If it does the same thing, now, number one, you're not going to get any error message saying it's already running because you closed it. If you do, then I'd reboot the computer and then right click on Spooky 2 and left click on open and see what happens then. If it's still doing it, I would reinstall Spooky 2. And actually I download a new copy from the Spooky 2 website and reinstall it. It is possible that there's some problem with the installation doing that. I don't know if it ever worked, but that would be what I do if you can't get it to work any other way. And none of this takes a long time, so give that a shot. If that doesn't work, email me or see me on Facebook. Jeremy, can you show how to save and then find reverse lookup? I don't know if you mean saving the results of it. One of the fun things you can do with Spooky that people don't know about is, let me move this out of the way. is if I select this generator, because I have a generator selected that's stopped, I can do an analyze or analyze plus. What that does is it does the analysis. So I can go back and look at a previous biofeedback because all the raw data is in here. That's what it boils down to. So I can select this one here. I don't know what it is. I can select that one there. And here are the 10 frequencies it got from that. Now, I'm not sure what you're saying. If you're talking about if I save this, it's actually going to show this. Let me see what we have. I'll save and find reverse. Oh, you said reverse lookup. We didn't do a reverse lookup yet. So close that. We'll do this again. Do this. And then we say reverse lookup. So I think, let me put some harmonics in there. And hopefully this doesn't take too long. That doesn't look good. Because this can take a long time. So while it's contemplating this, because I can't stop it anymore, I don't know. There's a couple things you could do with reverse lookup. One of them is you can save the reverse lookup itself. This thing's still running slow. Sorry about that. I wouldn't have done this if I had thought it out. So you can save the reverse lookup, and it saves it in, I think it saves it in the Spooky2 directory. What's that saving? Oh no, it saves it in scan data. It saves it in Spooky2 / scan data. So it's in the scan data folder is where it saves it. And it saves it as a text file. Let's go look and see if I have any in there. I never save them, so who knows? I mean, I usually don't run reverse lookup. So it is in local disk, Spooky2, and scan data. It'll be in here as a text file somewhere, but I don't think I have them any in here anymore. But that's where it saves them. So if you're asking that, that's where they are. And there's other text things in here, but that has to do with the way it builds things, is what it boils down to. So hopefully you named it something reasonable, because I don't think it's in, no, I think reports is my stuff. What's it doing? It's getting closer. So hang on, and I'll go on to the next question, and we'll come back and see what it is when we save it. Okay, Heather, is there a hunt and kill for remote? I found one that says it works with remote. Okay, so yes and no. If you want to actually do the scan remotely, the answer is no. The person has to be there. You're either hooked up with contacts with a GX, or they're hooked up with a Spooky Pulse for the pulse winds. We'll come back to this in a second. So there isn't one for kill or heal for remote where you can actually scan remotely. You can treat remotely, which is what, for instance, what a lot of them do is you scan locally with the TENS pads, or you're using the TENS pads to put the frequencies in your body, and then you're reading your heart rate, which is that's how the XM works to do a biofeedback. And then you run the results on yet another generator somewhere. And yes, you could do remote it that way, but I mean, that's the limit of what you can do. There's no way to do a biofeedback without the person physically there. So let me go back and say this one. So we're going to save this. I think that's what you're asking. And see, I'll put it in data. Sorry. So it's in Spooky2 data. Okay. So I'll call it reverse lookup -1. So it's in Spooky2 data. Like I said, I don't usually do this. It saved it. I don't care about this. And so if we go back and look in here, and we're going to look at Spooky2 data, it should be in here somewhere. Sort by modified. There it is right there. What does it look like? Just out of curiosity. That looks like just like I did on the screen. I hope that's what you're asking, but that's where it saved. It's saved as Spooky2 data. Okay, back to Heather. I answered you already. Jennifer. Why do my recent BFE results only give me a couple lines reporting ambulance, but the rest of the page is full of frequency hits only? Okay, the reason for that is because it didn't find anything with the other frequencies. So what it does is it's going through it, scanning the 10 frequencies. It's looking for programs in the programs database that are close to the frequency that it's looking for. Like in this case, that was a bad choice. This frequency, or it's a harmonic, meaning it's a double or a quadruple or an octal, or it's a half or a quarter or eighth. That's what a harmonic is. And so that's what it means. The page full of frequency hits only, that's because it didn't find any hits in the scan that it did. Keep in mind, I believe when you run the biofeedback, it's giving you the 10 frequencies that represent pathogens that are in your system that need to die. And my view is you take that, you save that, you get a killing shell preset, you add that biofrequency to it, and you run it. And if you want to do reverse lookup, you can, but I believe what you should be doing is killing them. Hope that answers your question. Robert, thanks for the answer. Setting some. What's this? I'm getting too tired for this, Robert. Thanks for the answer. It may have to do with setting time if it's a Sigma Delta ADC. One of your older videos, I paused and compared your settings. I don't know where that was. I don't think I've ever used zero before, but I mean, I understand why they do it, and I just think that I think running it at zero is experimental, more so than just running it, which is experimental anyway. So I think the jury's out. I think that you can find people on both sides of that question, and that this was referring to the bin read delay down here. Does it have a help? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Ensure the biofeedback has minimum time seconds between reading the current and phase angle values. I can't answer how it, the details on that. Okay, Paul, what's your opinion of current or angle current when doing BFEs? I think a lot of Brad Johnson and other people as well, they like to do this, and they like to do it as a angle plus current. He always does that. He feels it's better. But I always forget to do it. Personally, I'd like to see I could set it as a default. But if you do it wrong, if you forget to set it, you say, oh, dang, I'm going to run it again. No, you don't. Do an Analyze Plus then, which is what an Analyze Plus does. And so I can select the one that I just ran, and here are the frequencies, but now this is angle plus current. So if you forget, you can always redo it. And if you're not sure, you can run it with just the current, I think is the default. Run it there, and then do an Analyze Plus this angle current, and then when you build the killing, add them both in. If you're, that's another way to do that. Dan, what happens with higher frequencies? The GX Pro will run the higher frequencies, but program and the XM generator has a lower limit. When the XM generation limit, it does not go to the higher limit in the program. Well, what happens is that the XM, what they do is that they fake the XM out. The XM, it will actually go to 20. And the way it does that is with, gosh, that's a terrible one, with this WCM. And the WCM actually breaks up the wave. So it can actually go to 20 megahertz. And that's what it does for up to 20 megahertz. Both generators, if you're trying to do above that, and I can't remember if any of them do, they use harmonics for that. They use a harmonic of it. But that's the way that the XM gets to 20 megahertz. So it can do 20 megahertz. So it's not that it doesn't work. It just, it essentially does a WCM on it under the covers, so it can actually go to 20 megahertz. All right, so Jeremy, how many generators can one on a mini computer? That's a good question. I mean, I have 16 on this one, and it's a 4-year-old mini computer, and which is pretty slow, running Windows 10, running a pre-N series processor. It's a really slow processor and has pretty slow I/O in it as well, but it runs. So, I don't think that's a problem. It's really interesting. Spooky, the generator stuff is not demanding at all. Spooky's resource stuff is very, very light. That's why it'll still run on XP and run fine on XP, because the resources used are very light. However, what it does is it talks to every generator every second. Well, 1 second per generator is actually really slow in computer terms. So I don't see why it wouldn't run 20 or 30 or 40 without any trouble at all. Eventually, it would slow down, but I don't know when that would be. I don't have any problem servicing 16, and I'd keep adding. If I had more, I'd add them into it just to see what it would do. But I don't have any more to do it. So that's all I have. And when you're talking, okay, so it takes, I've got to run through 17 or 16 generators, and I got to do that every second. That's nothing in computer terms. It's nothing. So I don't see that as anything I worry too much about. So you wouldn't have a problem. Janet, can Spooky be used with a computer VirtualBox Windows? VirtualBox Windows. I think you're asking, can you use Spooky in a VirtualBox? And no matter what you're running the VirtualBox in, that's a virtual question. Actually, this Windows XP version of Spooky you see here is running in a virtual machine in VMware, because I use VMware, and actually the VMware, the host is a Linux machine. So yes, you can do all that if that's what you're asking. Yes, you can run it in VirtualBox if you want to. Obviously, it's not for the faint of heart. Virtualization works really well in most cases, and it should work with Spooky, and I've done it. I've done it on my 14-year-old laptop computer. I've run that with Linux as a host and as a virtual machine underneath it with Spooky, because I thought it was working better that way. So yes, it should work. But again, if you're not pretty technical, it's a bad idea. And also, here's the other thing. I don't know why you would want to do that unless you don't have a Windows machine. If you have a Mac or a Linux machine, then it makes sense. However, one of the main rules for Spooky is it needs to run all the time, 24 hours a day. Okay, keep that in mind. And also what's highly recommended, it's running on its own machine. The reason for its own machine, a couple reasons, but the big reason is while the resource demands on it for memory and CPU and all that are very light, the I/O stuff is not, because it blocks I/O. That means I can't do other things. So if you have a machine that you're doing a lot of video processing on or that sort of stuff, and you're running Spooky on it, whether it's a virtual machine or not, it's going to take up a lot of resources, and it will impact your main machine and the stuff you're doing. So it's really hard for you to impact Spooky, but the other direction, it isn't that hard to do. I hope that answers your question. Okay, Paul. Is Killing Mode Dual more effective than... No. No, it's not. What Killing Mode Dual is, let's go back to control. What Killing Mode Dual is it takes this frequency and runs it on out 1 and this frequency and runs it on out 2. And then it mixes them together in the boost, and so it's doing both frequencies at once. The advantage is it can run through all these frequencies in half the time. The disadvantage is now these frequencies are running at half the amplitude they were, and there's a second frequency going at the same time. I don't ever use it. It's not that I mean, John White's the one who did it, so he must think it works, but there's a limit to how far I'm willing to go. I understand I'm going to send this frequency, then that frequency, and that frequency. I'm a very linear person. But I'm going to mix this frequency and that frequency, and yes, they're both there. I don't feel as good about that, so I don't do it. But that's the difference. Dan, good, thank you. And are you using 3x 7-port hubs on your mini computer? No, on my mini computer is where I have the 16-port hub, is on the mini computer. So I have that, and I have, what else do I have plugged into? I have a wireless mouse plugged into it that I never use. But there's a technical reason for that, and that's plugged directly into the computer. But no, I'm not using 3 7-port hubs. I didn't daisy chain any of them together. It's a single hub. Now, if you go look at if you know how to do it, if you look on the inside, that's what it is. It's like, I think they're 5-port or 4-port hubs, and they're all daisy chained together inside, but they're done in a way that works. So theoretically, you can do this, okay? But as somebody pointed out earlier, they're trying to do it, and they are having problems because there can be limitations within the chipset of the USB hub, and I've never found that documented in any of the documentation that comes with a hub. So keep that in mind. Do you daisy chain your hubs? Not in that case. Not for Spooky. For this machine in here, I have a 16-port hub. In my other machines, I'm hooking directly in because I only have, on the one I have 2 generators, and the other one I only have 1 generator. So I don't daisy chain. Now, On my Linux machine, which I'm actually running my desktop on, which I'm running this Windows 11 desktop virtual in my Linux machine. Yes, I've got 3 or 4 of them daisy chained together, and it's happy with that. But again, I haven't done any spooky stuff that way. But it should work if you have the right hubs. In the present box, there's a hunt and kill program and just a kill program. When is a good time to run either program? Okay. I'm not sure. So hunt and kill is a biofeedback. And what hunt and kill does a biofeedback scan. And so the first time it takes like 19 minutes if you're running contact mode, and it gets you your 10 frequencies. And then it builds an internal killing preset, adds those frequencies to it, and runs those for 30 minutes, because it's going to be 3 minutes of frequency. At the end of that 30 minutes, then it goes back and says, okay, I've got these 10 frequencies. Then it scans that frequency and around those frequencies to see if things moved around, if it can refine it, and it comes up with 10 new frequencies that way. And then it runs the killing on those frequencies for 30 minutes. And by the way, the biofeedback it takes 2 or 3 minutes because it's only scanning around 10 frequencies, not scanning this whole range of 47K to 1.8 meg. And so it keeps doing that essentially forever until it doesn't find anything else, which in my opinion never happens. So that's what hunt and kill does. So you've got to be hooked up to it. And if you want to run it for 24 hours, you can, but you're going to be physically hooked up for the whole 24 hours. Versus killing, you're just taking the 10 that you found in biofeedback and you're running a preset for it, and you can run it in remote mode, and so it doesn't, it's not a problem, whatever you want to do. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but that's the best I can do. Bobby, this is our last question at the moment, so if you have any others, type them in soon. Can I use Spooky 2 on Dual Boot OS running both simultaneously? Well, here's the problem, Bobby. You can't, if you're dual booting, you can't run both of the boots at the same time. Actually, my Linux machine here is a dual boot. I have Windows 11 on it and I have Linux on it, and I get to choose one or the other. I can't run both at the same time. That's not possible. It is possible, believe it or not, this is an advanced concept, to run multiple copies of Spooky 2 at the same time if they're in the different folders. But that's kind of it's an odd thing. But I mean, actually on this machine this VM machine, I have like, let's see, how many do I have? I have, let's look. Dan, I can ask questions. I have like 10 different versions on here that I can start up anytime I want. Could I run 10 at the same time? Yes, because they're in different folders. Can they use the same generators? Absolutely not. That will give me problems. So you have to be careful of that. It's a very advanced concept. But no, you cannot run both boot stuffs at the same time. Dual boot means they're both installed on the machine, but you can only run one at a time. Thank you, Dan, for your comment. Okay, I have caught up, I think. Yes, I've caught up with all the Q&A. Is there any more Q&A out there? Yeah, somebody had you can't do anything with a Chromebook. Chromebook is not Windows. I played with it a lot. And you can't run a VM inside a Chromebook either, because it's not that smart. Let's see. Thank you for that, Annette. I appreciate it. So you're playing. I'm just reading something. Actually, I have an old Chromebook that was sold. They didn't support it anymore, so I have Linux on it now. And actually, I could do virtual machines on that, but the hardware is awful weak for that sort of stuff. It's a low end. All Chromebooks on Mac. Oh, let's see. Somebody had VirtualBox. Which will this be? MacBook has something. Yeah, MacBook you can run. Well, you can run VMware on it, which I like because I used to work for VMware, and that's free. You can run Parallels on it, but Parallels cost money. But it was built for an Apple. So and you can run, I think, one of the others as long as you don't have an M processor. The new M processor makes it much more difficult. So, and like I said, one of the problems with that is that one of the problems of that is that you really need a dedicated machine because the impact that any of this can have on your actual stuff you're doing. If you're not doing anything on it anyway, then that's not a problem. I like this. I converted an old PC to Linux. That's what I did in my Chromebook. Wonder if I could also run Spooky on a VM. If it has enough horsepower and memory, which means it really needs 4 gig memory minimum, then the answer is yes. You can run, you could run a VM in it. You wouldn't, of course, you have to install Windows into the VM. It's a virtual machine. It doesn't know the difference between and a physical machine. So you have to get the install stuff and the keys and all that crap to install Windows on it. You won't be able to run Windows 11 on it, but you could run Windows 7. That's what I do because that would be the lightest thing you could run on if you're going to play with an old PC and with VMware. So that's an interesting one. So is there anything else in here? Yeah, I don't think so. Any other questions? I'm sort of looking at I'm looking at chat. Thank you. I hope I was on. What the heck is that? I don't want to look at that. Let's see pre-made boxes. Somebody could have said bought a mini PC of $150 on Amazon for, but that's enough. Yeah, I think that's what I paid for that little one that I have in there. Is about 150 bucks. I paid less for that. The one that's got the 15 on it. I bought that 4 years ago. I think I paid about $120 for it. And it is slow. I mean, I wouldn't want to run it as a real desktop, but it works great for Spooky. Not a problem. Okay, I think we're done then, unless there's something else. This is your last opportunity. I am going to be leaving soon. Is that on? Okay. Well, thanks for attending tonight. I appreciate it. For everybody who's still here, and there's a bunch of you still are. Again, you can reach me at spookytechhelp@gmail.com, spookytechhelp@gmail.com. I do my best to help everybody on Facebook and through email and whatever. If you actually need some one-on-one time, I do that as well. And so, because a lot of people, especially new people, they need one-on-one. I mean, I've done one-on-ones where we took it. Okay, this is a generator. This is how you hook it up, down to that level. So if that's what you need, I can do that. If you need stuff with debugging stuff, I can help with that. Not a problem. All right, thanks everybody. I'll be doing another one of these in another one but I don't remember what the next one is next month. It's another beginner's one. I'm doing ones on biofeedback. I'm doing one on the CancerDB protocol. And I have some really good videos on CancerDB. If you're trying to run CancerDB, I have a couple videos to make it much simpler to do. It's still CancerDB, okay? So keep that in mind. Reach out to me if you need that. Okay, stop share. Thank you everybody for showing up. Appreciate it. Everybody try to keep well and do the best you can. I will talk to you later.